by my calculations, 23 days away from the start of college football season. Rob Brown here on this Thursday, August 8th, 2024, with Brendan Martin, best executive producer on the planet, in not just in the civilized world, the free world.
Shirt. It's got,
he got his fishing with his
SPF
holes. 150.
I
like that.
Yeah, it's breathable.
Yeah, now that there's badass. Now I like that. Hey, got Andy Humphry, KTGR Radio up in Columbia, Missouri. Does a great talk show every day talking about Mizzou. We're gonna get what's going on up there in Columbia, because I think they're one of my top 4 teams in the SEC this year. Also have Coach Matt Dean from Memphis.
And Rob, is college football just turning into the minor league professional program here for the NFL? Because I mean, they're talking about having to do injury reports in the SEC.
Well, Brian Kelly started that last year. That's a good point at LSU. He offered that up, so we'll see where that goes. Also, Gary Harris, Tuscaloosa, joins us as well. Channel 23, he and Rodney Orr, another one of our team members, do a great show Tuesday nights on Tider Insider TV. Lots to talk about, folks. Smash that subscribe button in the right-hand corner, bottom right-hand corner. Hit that Patreon button. The more support we get, the better guests we get, the more we can grow this show. And, hey, get pen and paper handy, because here we come covering all 16 of the SEC. And this is an Ole Miss shirt I got on today from Hewlett and Dunn. It's got red and blue Mississippi State logos all over it. And they're trying to print some more of the Chomp shirts for the Gators. They printed a bunch of them, and they made them. They sold them all. They made more, they sold them. And now they're trying to get the material to make more. And I'm telling you, folks, Hewlett and Dunn's got them. Here we go. Come on.
Sidelines with Rob Brown. Talk sporty to me.
Yeah, Patreon. Hey, look at here. We got Coach Matt Dean over in Memphis, Andy Humphry up at KTGR, the Tiger, up in Columbia, Missouri. And folks, 23 days away from the start of college football season. Andy, got to get you on here more often, because you know Mizzou, but you know the SEC, and I call it the Western Flank. You're bringing in some more of your bunk mates from the old days, like Oklahoma, into the league now. This thing's getting to be a lot of fun. But I've got Missouri, Ole Miss, Georgia, and Alabama as my top 4 SEC teams. Dennis Dodd comes on with us. He's a Mizzou grad out in Kansas City. You know that program inside out, but I think they're pretty damn good. 11-2 last year, and I don't give a damn how many Ohio State players quit on their team in the Cotton Bowl. Y'all dominated them and won that game, and you got Brady Cook back, and you got, I think, maybe the best player in the SEC, Luther Burden III, who of his 1,212 yards receiving last year, 700 of them were yards after contact. That's an SEC player. How you doing?
Not too bad. I mean, the way that you kind of spelled it out, it does kind of explain why a lot of Mizzou fans around here are excited about, the season starting in 3 weeks, since they started on a Thursday once again this year. And so, yeah, I mean, the fact that, that they brought, again, all that talent that they brought back on offense is a big reason why you're going to get fans excited just because of that. You expect to see a good amount of points being put up by this team, no matter who they might be playing. And then on the other side, defense has a few question marks, but there's still optimism there. I mean, they had a lot of folks go to the NFL draft, and they have to try and replace them with players that maybe aren't as experienced, don't have that same type of proven nature yet, but they addressed it in the portal. And the fact that it's not only that, but also just how the schedule lines up. It's very manageable for them. They went 10-2 in the regular season last year, and folks are painting a very clear path towards at least 10 wins this year. And so that's kind of how it lines up. And when you recognize that, and you have an expanded playoff, and you have again all the returning talent that you have, and a schedule that's favorable to you, it makes sense to go all in, because you just don't know how many times you're going to be able to line up all of those features every single year at a school like Mizzou. And so that's why it's understandable that fans see this as a real opportunity to see their team take another step in them trying to climb up the hierarchy of college football.
One more question before I go to Matt Dean. Where does Cody Schrader rank in Mizzou history of the great players, offense, defense, special teams? It doesn't matter, because what he did last year, 1,627 yards coming from a D2 program, was beyond impressive, but not surprising. After we watched him, the kid just works hard.
Yeah, I mean, as far as favorite players, he's absolutely up there. And just as far as single seasons that you line up against some of the greater performances that we've seen here at Mizzou, it's definitely top 5, top 10, I would say. Okay. It was a year where he really took off. He didn't spend his whole career here at Mizzou. He obviously started at D2 and only spent 2 years with the Tigers, and so you don't see all those accumulating stats from a long college career just at one school. But I mean, how often do you see that anymore in today's age of college football and the transfer portal and everything like that? So I mean, you're right as far as just the peak that he rose to based on where he came from. It's one of the stories that Mizzou folks will remember for a very long time, just because of how he started. St. Louis kid, of course, so you get even further attached to what he's done, and then you hope he attaches somewhere in the NFL. Right now is trying to make the 49ers squad as much as possible, so we'll see on that. But yeah, I mean, one of the more memorable times for a Mizzou running back, I think, to come through Mizzou and essentially perform the way that he did beyond all expectations.
Matt Dean, jump in here with Andy Humphry, KTGR, the big show, or as Ed Sullivan would say, the big shoe up in Columbia.
Hello, everyone. Andy, good to hear you talk. I actually have a really good family friend that joined the Mizzou football staff. He's an offensive GA, Cooper Williams, was with Mike Norvell, played offensive line for Mike Norvell at the University of Memphis. And one of my close friends in college was Robin Pinchton, your head women's basketball coach. So Great to catch up. And you, Rob, you started it. Andy, you confirmed it. But I think Luther Bird III is going to be the first wide receiver taken whenever the draft situation comes for him. And I also think when you have that incredible skill returning, when you look at their quarterback situation, you have that continuity on the offensive side of the ball. I mean, they were a really fun team to watch last year. And I don't care what you say in the bowl game about Ohio State having to play the quarterback room. You guys physically whipped them. And I think that momentum carries over. And honestly, I'm kind of with Rob. I got you guys as, a possible playoff team. But, things have to go well. You get, from a depth standpoint, everybody's a couple losses away from being a much different football team. And, everyone wants to find that formula for having a great offense and matching it with a really good defense, right? It's very hard to get sometimes. And quite frankly, I think Mizzou's not the only team that's in that boat. I think historically, since Lane's got there, the defense has gotten better at Ole Miss, but they've lost some shootouts too. And I think anytime you play fast, you put your defense back on the field. And if you have a 3-and-out, man, that's almost catastrophic against a really good team these days.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting how Eli Drinkwitz here has kind of developed his aptitude of making sure that that both sides of the ball are getting their fair share. I mean, for the longest time, or I guess in the time that he had since taken over the Mizzou job, just to be able to have the self-awareness of almost learning on the job a little bit, because he hadn't been a head coach for all that long when he took the Mizzou job. He'd only done it for 1 year at Appalachian State and then immediately got the Mizzou job. He decided that he wanted to be his own offensive coordinator while also being the head coach for the first 3 seasons. Right. And I mean, to a degree, he was able to, to handle the offensive side of the ball a little bit. but it meant a little less attention, I think, to the defensive side, or at least trying to it's almost like you had to get a really experienced coach to be a defensive coordinator, and that was going to be hard to find sometimes. But once he found Blake Baker to, kind of give him that chance, and then he himself realized, like, hey, I probably need to play the CEO a little bit more than getting into the weeds on offense. Let me find an O coordinator to handle things a little bit more, take some of my workload away. And then he found Kirby Moore, who did, I think, an excellent job in his first year calling the plays for Mizzou. And the results certainly showed that with how individual players improved throughout the year. So, yeah, I think it's just it's not just, figuring out some things or tendencies in the SEC. I think it's more about the changing job that a head coach in college football has now compared to 5 years ago. And Eli Drinkwitz recognizing that and knowing where the wind is blowing on those sorts of things. And so I think for him, it's been really similar. I think you mentioned Ole Miss to Lane Kiffin with how he's again tried to progress at the Ole Miss program, and those two schools, those two football teams, I think are on kind of similar trajectories, right? Returning offense, a lot of talent there, experienced quarterback, offensive-minded coaching staff. And then on defense, they're hopeful, but there are still question marks that need to be answered. So I'm interested to see how those two teams are maybe in lockstep for most of the season, or if one falters here or there, because they're both on the same kind of trajectory, trying to come from the exact same spot. So interesting to see how that might play out.
Hey, high school football in Missouri, talent-wise, Missouri's got a player out on most lists. He's 5 or 6 in the country. Nawari from out there around St. Joseph,
Williams,
Kansas
Winery,
City.
Yep.
How do you say his name?
Winery, actually, I believe.
Winery, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, Winery. And he's a big-time defensive player. When you can get a defensive lineman like that, and I was watching this morning something about Julius Peppers out of Bailey, North Carolina. You think about 6'6", 6'5", 6'6" guys that can move and bend, and I'm not going to talk like these guys on TV that talk about bending and flex, he's a damn good player is what he is. And he's coming in. Do you think that in-state NIL program that you have at Missouri is helping a lot more than people realize? Because, Luther Burden III, East St. Louis was a national superpower for a long time. I mean, I don't know what, it disappeared for a while, but it's bad. But there's some players up there. There's no question there's a lot of players up there between Kansas City and Missouri, everywhere north, south, east, and west. I go back to the 2007 Missouri-Kansas game, 1 versus 2. 10 of the 11 starters on offense from Missouri were in-state kids. The only out-of-stater was a Texan. No surprise, the quarterback, Chase Daniel. Is it looking like that again? Because Eli, I like him. You ask that guy a question, he'll give you an answer, and he actually will look at you when he's talking to you. I mean, he's from Alma, Arkansas. What's not to like about him?
Oh, nothing wrong with Alma, Arkansas, that's for sure.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, recruiting-wise, there's talent here at Mizzou. I think Eli Drinkwitz has also realized, again, where things are heading. And the fact that, look, you can try, and he started out at Mizzou saying, hey, we got to lock down the border as much as possible. We got to get as many of these highly touted in-state kids as we can. And he's made some good inroads, especially in St. Louis and Kansas City, as you mentioned, like getting those two, first Luther Burden and then Williams Winery to just last year. Now he's just joining as a true freshman this year in camp. So, I mean, it's not only that, but I think growing the scope a little bit more has helped him out. I mean, being able to go to Florida and to Pennsylvania. They got a 4-star quarterback out of Pennsylvania for the class of 2025, Matt Bowers, this year. They've gone to the West Coast a little bit. I think he does recognize that, the NIL program, to keep in-state kids here, to have those incentives was very important for some of those St. Louis and Kansas City guys. I don't know exactly how it'll kind of evolve, though, with, again, the revenue sharing structure, the fact that Mizzou, what they did really well was they brought their NIL in-house and made sure that that was something that they could control a little bit more, have a little more hands-on on the processes that these players have to go through to broker some of these deals and to be able to get as many opportunities for them as possible. Going to be interesting to see how it looks going forward. New athletic director now, Laird Veach, coming from Memphis. Spent a lot of time at Mizzou as an administrator before, going off to some bigger and better jobs. Mm-hmm. But I mean, it's going to be really interesting to see the landscape and how different athletic departments are going to treat this. Because again, the relationship between collectives and schools, it might be changing a little bit based on these new rules. The schools are going to try and break the rules as much as possible. We do know that, but I mean,
and the SEC, come on.
Yeah, I mean, what is college football? I don't know.
I mean, seriously.
Yeah, but I mean, again, I think it's kind of a wait and see process on how that looks because yes, Mizzou's NIL has been favorable to them. It has given them a bit of a leg up. I don't think just the state law part, but I think just the sheer dollars and cents part. I think they do have a good amount of donors that are ready to spend to keep Mizzou competitive in the SEC. We'll just have to see how these new regulations will affect that.
Matt Dean, the pride of Davenport, Iowa.
Anytime I look at any conference, particularly football and basketball, right? But I think more so football because you're not a double round robin schedule. I like to look at pivotal road games because let's face it, if we're going to be a championship team, we're expected to win our games at home. I hope that's a fair statement. But Andy, I was looking, and I actually kind of like your schedule, except there's obviously you got to go play in Tuscaloosa. That's going to be a big game. I think October 26th. I'm kind of cheating. I have the schedule in front of me, but I'll take another game. I think October 5th. You should come into the A&M game undefeated, just on paper. Okay, I know we're not making any predictions right now, and A&M,
I'll double that one.
Yeah, but A&M is a team that some people think may be on the rise a little bit. New coach, Elko's a really good defensive mind. Probably will have a plan for your guys' offensive weapons. I see that as kind of the true first huge road test this year. And I think, just saying, if you win in College Station and you're competitive in Alabama, you win your home games, there's a path. But I think the A&M game is one that could possibly turn your season if it doesn't go your way. That's just a real early opinion.
It's not wrong. I mean, we were talking about this yesterday on our show. We were trying to pinpoint, okay, looking at this schedule, what do you think is the most important game for Mizzou this year? Right. And I think a lot of folks are pointing toward late in the season when they host Oklahoma on November 9th. And there's a rivalry aspect to that. There's been back and forth between Mizzou and Oklahoma fans for quite a while since Mizzou left the conference. And, of course, a long-standing rivalry before that. Could be very important for sure. Not trying to discount the importance of that. I do see, though, as you mentioned, that Texas A&M game. Mizzou has about as long of a runway to that game as you could possibly have in college football. Again, like 4 straight home games against mostly non-conference opponents that are just – the toughest one there is Boston College, and it's just like you should be 4-0. That should be the expectation going into that A&M game. And what I see it very similar to last year, if we can make a comp, Mizzou hosted Kansas State week 3 last year, and that 61-yard field goal at the very end to win that game against K-State in the tie game, and then the fans stormed the field, everything like that. That had been kind of the game that proved that, okay, this is real. Like Eli Drinkwitz has been talking a lot about what this program could be. Now we finally have a result. A lot of people have been talking about what Mizzou could do this year, and rightfully so. They've got the team, they've got the schedule, they've got everything lining up for them. But the first time, again, as you mentioned, that they get to prove that is at Texas A&M, and it just looks a lot like what that Kansas State game was for last year's team. This game at A&M could provide, I think, the exact same type of proof of concept for Mizzou fans that they can look at the rest of the schedule and be like, okay, now there's a path to where if we go to Alabama, we could be undefeated for that game. And, even if we lose that, you still got 4 games left. You're going to have that Oklahoma game. It's still very important, but then a manageable schedule going forward. Yeah. I mean, winning that A&M game could really clear the path to either having probably a 1-loss season towards that point, as long as you take care of your home games, take care of business against teams that you're going to be favored against. So, yeah, you're right. It is. I was not going into the conversation yesterday on our show thinking, I know A&M's important. I don't know if it's the most important. Now I see that argument quite a bit more because, it just proves that you can belong where you're being talked about right now. And yeah, of course, a tough place to go and play. But Mizzou has had some success there whenever they've gone to College Station. It's been a while since they've been there, but you'd be surprised at the road record that they've had in their last 5-6 meetings going to Kyle Field.
You think about it with Missouri. You don't play Florida this year, but they got a tough stretch. Talking about your schedule, Auburn comes to Columbia. You got to go to Tuscaloosa, and then you got Oklahoma, and that one's in Columbia. But you got to bye in between. That stretch right there is going to be big, but you got Brady Cook. Missouri just always seems to have really good cerebral quarterbacks. Guys that are just, 6'3", 6'4", can see the field, are just natural leaders. What do people that are watching, and we have an audience of all 16 SEC and non-SEC people, but in the last few minutes before you go, because I know you got a bunch of stuff to do, what is it that we don't know, we hadn't even thought about with Mizzou, that we need to know, other than Eli Drinkwitz finishes every interview with MIZ, as Coach O would always do, go Tigers. I like that. I love the way he is a branding genius. I think it's great.
And you almost have to be now because, again, when you're recruiting your own team nowadays, and you're not only recruiting high school kids, but you're recruiting transfers, everything like that, you have to know how to play the game. And Eli Drinkwitz, again, he's leveled up as far as how to be a head coach in college football over the last year or so. Yeah, I think the national narrative is that, look, at Mizzou, they should be starting in the top 15 this year. They should have that chance. It should be right in front of them. Defensively, what do they got? Because they're losing Blake Baker this year. He went to LSU to be a really highly paid assistant there. And they brought in Corey Batoon to take his spot from South Alabama. I think the fact that this team has done really well in the portal to address some of those concerns on defense, I think is something that will probably surprise a few folks. And we'll see how it works in practice very soon. But I think the way that this has been set up, I don't think Corey Batoon, we'll worry about play calling later and we'll see what his tendencies are there. But I think as far as the scheme, I don't think he has to change too much because there are some holdovers from last year's unit. And when you slot in some high energy players to rush the quarterback, play linebacker and maybe have a cover corner or two, I think you can have a unit that's workable because, again, Mizzou's offense is being talked about, and rightfully so.
Mm-hmm.
I think the defense is a unit that can maybe surprise some folks because we don't know the names yet, but a lot of them are transfers, and they're trying to make their name with a new squad. Mizzou got some really good hits in the portal on defense the last couple of years or so. I think that's the main thing that we're going to be finding out here very soon. Okay. And whether the narrative is going to be flipped a little bit about, okay, Mizzou's great, but here are our concerns, and here's why we're maybe pausing on maybe not putting them in the playoff just yet. But again, we're going to find out on October 5th. But again, as you mentioned, that's the first test. I can't learn anything about what happens in September with these first 4 home games unless they squeak by one of them, then you get a little concerned. But first chance that you really get to wow people won't come until October, and it's a little bit of a waiting game, but at least you get some football to tide you over.
And the psychology of that is Missouri is going to want to prove to everybody who's doubting them because they're 4-0 in all likelihood 4-0 record. That's what's going to give Missouri an edge, in my opinion, in that game. Eli Drinkowitz calls the defense, guys. You know it, the death row defense. He loves to brand. But Andy, let people know how they can follow you. You do a great daily show, but do us a favor, give us a retweet. We'll post your stuff as well if you are following us on Twitter. But appreciate you coming on, and let's do it again soon.
Yeah, for sure. At KTGR Big Show on Twitter. We're on 4 to 6 Central in the afternoons, and you can hear a bunch about Mizzou and still Cardinals because that seems still
exactly.
going on. But yeah, it's a great time, and yeah, thanks for having me on, Rob.
Hey, look, thank you, and we'll do it again here very soon. And have a good one. Andy Humphry, KTGR in Columbia, Missouri. And Matt, you know, this is what I love about you bring these guests on, and then you've always, you know, with being in coaching 33 years, you've got a lot of angles, and I thought that was cool. Cooper Williams, of course, went to St. Louis Catholic School in Memphis, went to Christian Brothers High School, played at Memphis, been with Norvell a long time, and now at Missouri. He's only, 28 years old because my daughter Hallie and him graduated from St. Louis in 8th grade before they went off to high school together. But great kid, great family. His dad, Tommy, they're just, as they say in the country, they're good people. Let's say something about our sponsors. Also, got a new sponsor that's joined us, going to get their feet wet. Exo Armor, based in Auburn with a national and global reach, making the non-invasive pads and all kinds of braces and casts and everything that are being used to keep sports and keep athletes going using the 3D printer and all. We're going to have a lot more to say about them as we go forward. Exo Armor, incredible company. You've seen Dr. Michael Zabala on the show a number of times talking about what they do. Player gets hurt in the first quarter, 3D imaging, they can have a brace on him in the third quarter. He is good to go. Also, Rumble Boxing Gym, 1835 Union Avenue in Midtown Memphis. How you fight is how you live. They do 45-minute classes with 48 people in the class. They have instructors up there, 15 3-minute sessions. 45 minutes is as long as a prize fight between two heavyweights can go. Matt, think about if you are 235 pounds and you're going 45 minutes. The boxing, they have all the equipment, the gear, everything you need. Rumble Boxing Gym. Check out the QR code. Also, yesterday, I was at Hewlett and Dunn. All the new fall fashions are coming in. Pendleton, Schaefer, Filson, Duckhead, STS. It blows your mind, all the stuff they've got coming in. Schaefer Outdoors, the Danner boots, and just, cross hybrid shoes, the hiking boots and everything, the luggage from Filson, and over 7,000 pairs of cowboy boots. And let me say something about House Industries. I'll be going through Cherry Valley today on my way up to Jonesboro. House Industries located in Cherry Valley, Arkansas, 99,000 square foot warehouse. They make agriculture products to harvest and to plant, the better roller, the pulverizer, the better chopper. Also make the aerators for catfish farms, houseindustriesinc.com. And let me say something too about web-footed kennels. That's where I'm going, up in Jonesboro. My friend Chris Aiken, for 30 years, the kennel, they train dogs. They also do selective breedings of the hunting dogs, retrievers. And again, he's still working on it, a German wirehair. He's training a friend of mine's dog, and the dog is doing 150 and 200-yard marks. Web-footed kennels. That's WEBB, footed kennels. Find them on Facebook, Chris Aiken, or reach out to me directly on the show if you want to get in touch with him. If you're looking at getting a hunting dog, he's been doing it a long time. He's one of the kindest people I know. I've hunted with him. I've known him. You'll see his dogs wagging their tail when Chris Aiken comes up to see him in the Vitamin Shop in Olive Branch in Oxford, Mississippi. Stopped in the Vitamin Shop, Matt, when I was in Oxford Tuesday to meet Yancey Porter for lunch up on the square at the Tallahatchie Gourmet Grill, which I highly recommend. But they were out of gumbo. But I had the salmon and the cheese grits and an awesome salad that was delicious. The Vitamin Shop, they've got everything that you need. Prebiotics, probiotics, energy gels, goo. They have goo. Also have stuff for your gut health. The Vitamin Shop, check them out. You can order online. Matt, a lot to say about these great sponsors that we have. We have more sponsors all on sidelines.live. You can hit the hyperlink. Support our sponsors. That's how we stay on the air. I like that question about Missouri, and you flip it around. If Florida had Missouri's schedule, a lot of people will say Gators, are going to be picked a lot higher. I want to ask you about Florida. I want to get inside your coaches, inside your head. Logo fever is the term Cole Kubelik and Roman Harper use. I think people are stricken with a severe case of logo fever. Florida's got a 12-game schedule. If they get off to a hot start, 4-1, 5-1, don't you think they approach those last 5 games differently?
Yeah, that's college athletics in general, Rob. I mean, that's why the interesting thing about the Missouri-Texas A&M game is maybe Boston College comes in there and challenges them. Well, I don't think it's going to be much of a game, but I could be wrong. But you're going to go on your biggest first road test of the year in the league, and you really haven't been challenged. Whereas you look at Florida, I mean, they got Miami week 1, don't they?
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, I got to tell you, I'm a big believer in momentum. If Florida takes care of business against Miami, and I've seen some people really high on Miami. I know we don't talk about it much here because they're not an SEC school.
Feel free to talk about any school, Tommy boy.
The reality is, I still think there are a lot of 4 and 5 stars on Florida's roster. How do you untap that? You talk about logo fever. Everyone knows the Gators have got players. I like the quarterback room. I mean, their starter, returner. They got to stay healthy in that situation. But I actually like them against Miami because it's a home game in that environment and that rivalry. If it doesn't work out, Rob, then it starts to creep in. But you're exactly right. You go 4-1, you start believing. And when you're in the foxhole with your teammates together, that's the mentality that every game we don't go in just to be competitive. We go in to win. And
yeah.
I think the start for the Gators is just going to lead to some good things, and they can beat Miami.
Well, you talked about 4 and 5 stars. We go back. I feel like I'm in a courtroom, and I'm not an attorney, of course, but 63% of Florida's roster is 4 and 5 star players.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of talent on that roster. I think they just need to be put in the right sets, the right alignments. I don't know. Here's the thing with me is, and I'll just say this, with Florida, I think I'm guilty of this. I've got more faith in Florida, the University of Florida, their program, their history, their tradition, their resources, than I do Billy Napier. I'm not saying he's not a good coach, but so far he's 11-14. So I just look at Florida. It's like Gary Harris is joining us now, WVUA TV sports anchor, Channel 23 in Tuscaloosa, home of Mary Turner, a great attorney, the Turner Law Firm there, Waller and Susan May, Al May, great people, Rodney Orr, a lot of good people, and Nick Saban still lives there, and his wife Terry, the Saban Catholic Student Center, which lots of my friends go out of their way to go to Mass and receive the Eucharist. Thank you to the Sabans. I think of all of his accomplishments at Alabama, that might be the big one. Gary, how you doing this morning? Got Matt Dean on here. John Hartwell's on the way to go see his grandson in North Carolina right now, so he is on a special mission. But glad to have you back, Gary.
Well, good to be here. Good morning. It's I actually woke up to a very pleasant, you won't believe this because there's been no rain at all this week and no even clouds in the forecast, but it's overcast this morning and it feels great outside. So, hey, small victories, right? Because it's been brutally hot. So it's nice this morning. But yeah, you mentioned Coach Saban, Rob still living here, and I was on another show in Mobile. It all runs together. But anyway, it was out of Mobile earlier this week and was asked about Coach Saban's situation. And I said, well, this is his home. I mean, they have a home down in Florida. And, he's going to be traveling a lot with ESPN, obviously, in game day, but this is home. They're going to live here, and still have the Knicks Kids Foundation and still doing so much in the community. So, as he has said, they had never spent more than 5 years in a single location in their lives, as a married couple until Tuscaloosa, and been here since 2007. So this is home, and I think this is where they're going to be, as long as he's involved with television and the Knicks Kids Foundation and all the things that she has going on. Tuscaloosa will be the home base.
Yeah, and I want to ask you this. I was just saying something about Billy Napier. I look at programs a lot, and I look at the program, and I find myself sometimes having more faith in the program like I do Florida. Not that Billy Napier's not a good coach. I just think he inherited a mess when he took over the job, but he would not have been on that staff with Nick Saban for as many years as he was, with some really smart coaches, if he wasn't capable. You look at the two schools that have been to the SEC championship the most, and they are Alabama and Florida. It's hard you can't undo that, can you?
No, listen, I everything you said is true. Billy Napier is a really good football coach. I mean, anyone that excels at this level and gets to the point that he is at is a quality football coach.
Yes.
That's not even in the discussion. But all coaches aren't successful as head coaches. And that's just,
right.
And I have said this in my 40 years of covering sports, some of the best football coaches, and I don't know, Matt and Rob, how you feel about this, or basketball coach, some of the best coaches I've ever seen, coaches were not cut out to be head coaches. They just weren't. They were better, lieutenants than generals. And I'm not saying that, the book's still being written on Billy Napier, but I think what you said is the truth. I mean, he did a great job at Louisiana, but that is a totally different situation than what he stepped into at the University of Florida. And right now, I'm kind of, I heard you and Matt talking before I got on the air. I'm kind of in that camp too. I don't. Yeah, I know, when you're preseason, a fan base, best case scenario, somebody asked me, does this team have a path to 10 wins? Everybody's got a path right now. It's 0-0. I mean, best case scenario for every team, you can, if you're a fan, you can say, man, we beat this team. We can win here. We can, of course you can. And best case scenario for Florida probably is, they can win 9 games. But the flip side of that is with that schedule and where this football team was last year, and the thing that bothered me when I watched Florida was the self-inflicted wounds, the mistakes, the things that they did that the opponent didn't have to inflict on them. They did it to themselves, and it cost them some ball games. I mean, I even remember the Florida State game. Florida was in position to win that game, and I just thought that they helped Florida State out. So, you got to clean all that up. You got to be more sound. I thought last year the quarterback played fine. I thought he did a fine job. I think he's gonna have a good year. But I think this is a 6-6, 7-5 type team with that schedule. And the question is, if you have a 6-6, 7-5 season in 2024, is Billy Napier going to be brought back? I don't know. I would say right now, in my opinion, it's 50-50 as to whether or not he's the head coach again in 2025.
Yeah, it's a good take. I mean, I think, again, got a lot of talent there, but they got to get off to a good start. I see Perry Mason. This is his year to prove it for damn sure. I mean, he's got to do it. I don't have anything. I agree with what you're saying. He's shown ability. Let's look at Alabama. Kalen DeBoer. You look right now in recruiting. You know what's going on, Auburn and Alabama. It's how do you want your million in 20s or 50s? They're both in the top 5 in the country in recruiting. Is a lot of this that Kalen DeBoer was at Washington for several years. He's got a lot of contacts. He probably had a lot of guys close to, he was going to bring to Washington. And now he's going, hey, man, why don't you come to Tuscaloosa? And honestly, who the hell wouldn't want to come there, guys? I mean, to a program that's won like Alabama has, and here they are, number 5 in the coaches poll preseason. Matt, jump in, man, whenever. I'm just throwing this out there, but, Kalen, look at the coach at Kansas State. If anyone asks you, well, guy coming from South Dakota, he was at Washington 2 years, but he mainly coached all those wins in South Dakota or whatever. That guy from North Dakota State at Kansas State's in his 5th or 6th year. They won 27 games the last 3 years at Kansas State. and they went to the Sugar Bowl. Now, Alabama beat them 45-20. They won the Big 12 when they beat TCU. But I think if you're a good coach, Matt and Gary, it doesn't matter where you've been, you're going to be a good coach anywhere you go.
That is true. I will use a baseball analogy here because I do believe Gary's right. We know Billy Napier's a good football coach. But, you look at the New York Yankees, and there are a lot of people, and I'm going to compare the SEC head football coaches a little bit like the Yankees or Red Sox, what do you want to say baseball-wise. Sometimes it's hard to handle the media at the bigger venues if you're not used to that as a head coach, okay? You can't hide, not that he was hiding at Louisiana, but it's a lot harder to hide with that fan base after they're used to the old ball coach back in the day, and then you have Urban Meyer. They're used to people talking in front of the camera, and they like what they hear. And I'm telling you guys, that's a portion of it. Still, recruiting is huge. And to me, you talk about Kalen, I mean, honestly, he had a template. All the way back to his NAIA coaching days, recruiting is effort level, guys, and relationships. And if you have a template that you follow and you listen to the staff you inherit and say, okay, these are the high schools we have to go to in the state of Alabama. These are some places in Georgia we think we can tap into. These are the Florida, Texas schools we need. And you follow that template and you inherit a roster like the Boars inherited, you're going to be really good, But you look at Florida's situation. I'm not saying Billy's in over his head, but Gary's right. I'm not sure 6 and 6.75 gets him year 4. And unfortunately, some of the things in front of the camera have not always been the best the first 2+ years.
Yeah, I'm piggybacking on DeBoer. I think you guys said it all. Relationships and recruiting are everything. And, as I have kind of figured out, talking to some people, when he got here, I mean, again, you're talking about you come in January, you're bringing some of your staff, you're keeping some staff, you're inheriting some staff, you're bringing in some coaches from the outside. So really, it's meshing, 3 coaching staffs or 3 different coaching wings together. And yeah, he's going to tap into the resources and the relationships that he has. And, a lot of these kids that Alabama has would have been committed to Washington. So right. It only makes sense that in his first year that you're going to tap into where you have relationships. They're going to have to build some relationships in Alabama. But the recruiting class is rated, I think, number 2 in the country right now.
Yeah.
And they
not
have
like
5 stars
struggling.
Yeah, they have more 5 stars committed than any program in the country. It's just that, a lot of them are from California or other parts of the country or Ohio and then, you have in-state where Alabama has, under Nick Saban, pretty much, for the most part, gotten the guys that they've wanted. And obviously Auburn is pounding in-state. So I do think fans of Alabama, hey, we're the University of Alabama. And I think going forward, you're going to see more recruiting in the state of Alabama, no doubt about it. But right now, coming in January, the idea is to get as many good football players as you can. And, they tapped into those West Coast roots. They tapped into some other areas of the country. And, they're bringing them in. But I don't have, getting back to, about his record, I like what he says. Winners win. That's what they do. And, I think that, his track record, I mean, he played for the national championship last year.
That's right.
He played for the national championship and won the Pac-12. And in 2 years at Washington, the job that he did there was unbelievable. So I have no reservations about his ability here. I've watched him with the media. If anything right now, I'm wondering maybe if they need to pull it back a little bit. I mean, they've allowed so much access as compared to what we're used to, but I have a really strong vibe on Kalen DeBoer. Now, again, I always say, even with Saban, when you're at the level Alabama's at, it's going to be 3 or 4 plays in 3 or 4 games. 2 years ago, Alabama lost heartbreakers at Tennessee and heartbreaker at LSU in the final play of the game. That kept them from having an undefeated regular season. Right. Last year after the loss to Texas, they won those kind of games. They won some games they could have lost. So even when you're at the top level, there's going to be 3 or 4 games that are going to probably dictate and decide your season. You make those plays, you're in the playoff. If something happens, you might not be in the playoff. And let's just cut through the chase. Everybody's asking about how many games Alabama's going to win. I'll just say this. If Alabama's not in the playoff, it's going to be considered a disaster. It's simple as that. So whether that's 9 wins or 10 wins, if they're in the playoff, I think that everything's good. And if they're not, there's going to be a lot of, gnashing of teeth.
And there's questions about, hey, if Napier with that schedule goes 8-4, are they in the playoffs? I think it's going to be a lot like NCAA basketball tournament. We all remember when Kentucky one year went 16-12 and got into the tournament. That's because they're Kentucky. You get a discount if you're a program that has won a lot. I mean, I think what Kalen DeBoer is doing is taking advantage. There's a lot of low-hanging fruit out there that he knows, these coaches, and he's saying, come with me. Alabama's always going to be able to recruit in state, but I know Freeze and Auburn, they're going after that too. Rodney Orr, and you both have said it. I'll tell you what it was Greg McElroy at the Touchdown Club in Memphis, and that was June, I guess it was May 13th, he was up here. And he said, Kalen DeBoer, he goes, he's pretty out there. He's in the open. He goes, he's giving people his phone number and stuff like that. We pulled him aside, Cole Kubelik, and I was like, you don't want to do that because these fans might get a little excited if you have a loss. And you know how it is in Alabama with Auburn and Alabama, the fans, it's just the way it is. And you know it. You can win a game 49-10, and there's people in the parking lot and the tailgates going, man, what happened to the defense in the fourth quarter?
10, yeah.
You had the 13 guys in there and 2 trombone players from the band, but far be it from an excuse.
Yeah, no, that's the one thing that you're right, Rob, that you can't prepare for. And I don't. And listen, it's Matt mentioned the Yankees. I mean, from a college football standpoint, to me, Alabama, they are the Yankees. Right. They are the Lakers. They are the Cowboys. I mean, it's that kind of scrutiny, and I think already, we've been in a couple off the record meetings with him. I think there's already some things that you're right. He, the access, and I think he's pulling back already a little bit in terms of, who has his number and things like that. Because here, even the media, it's different. Some of the questions that he's been asked and some of the things that they're concerned with. The first day of practice, somebody took a video of the condominium complex across the street from the complex because Saban, you had to sign a contract that said you wouldn't watch practice, and there were kids out on there, and a video was shot and put online already different. They took it down, and stuff about because DeBoer doesn't curse on the practice field. One writer wrote a big thing about how much Womack does curse and documented what he said, and which, hey, this just in, football coaches cussing at practice. But I think they tried to infer that Womack, shouldn't be cursing. But the head coach never said, there's not going to be cussing on the practice field. He just said, I try not to use, curse words when I'm coaching. But that doesn't impact his staff or the players or things like that. So the level of scrutiny, the things that, whether it's, if you come out and and I'm assuming they're going to come out in black cleats, but if you come out in white cleats, or that's going to be a major story. Or if they spat the shoes, because, for a long time, those players like to spat the shoes with the white tape. And then Nike said, no, we don't want to cover up the swoosh and all this kind of stuff. So
yeah,
anything that he's probably never even thought about after this first game, if there's something different about how they come out on the field or how they warm up or where they tape their shoes or anything else, people are going to notice and media is going to notice and it's going to be written about. And that type of scrutiny, you get it at very few places. I mean, it's different here. And, there's been some talk about white helmets, and Lord knows if you were to break out white helmets, what that would create. So, it's just at Washington, other schools, if you wear an alternative uniform, it's great. Hey man, it's a chance to sell some different jerseys, and nobody, Oregon's got so many uniforms, I can't even keep up with them. But at Alabama, can you imagine if you came out and, they did an alternative jersey. People don't realize this. Nike did an alternative uniform while Saban was here. And the only thing that was added was a little houndstooth hat right here on the ridge of the jersey. That was the alternative, So, there's so many things that people keep score on with Alabama football that I don't care how good you are as a coach, you have to learn it. And, we'll see how he adjusts.
Yeah, Matt, jump in here. The houndstooth, the subtle. I mean, there's certain schools they don't have to mess with their jerseys, but also, why fix it if it ain't broke, Matt?
I'm going to change gears here just a little bit. I'm a big Chicago Bear fan, so I was watching Hard Knocks, and Coach Saban was on Hard Knocks because I didn't realize this. When he was the head coach at Toledo, he coached Matt Abrams, who's the head coach of the Bears. And just watching Saban in that segment, now in more of a media consultant role, whatever you want to say, an analyst role, man, he's phenomenal. Because we saw some great pressers, Gary, back in the day with Coach Saban. But now you see a little bit more of that in a different light. And, you're right. If things are not the same way, as long as they're still winning, winning wins, right? But when you have a stumble and they don't like a couple things you did, it's going to be because, at Washington, he was really beloved the last 2 years because he just dominated for the most part. I say dominate, Oregon, my son's there. We lost to him 3 different times by a field goal each time, I believe. Okay. So he had a knack for winning close games, but he also had Rome Odunze and Michael Penix Jr., 2 of the top 8 picks and 9 picks in the NFL draft. So I think now the thing I like about him is I think he's going to inherit a lot of good defensive personnel. And I think for the first time in a while as a head coach, he knows I may not have to score 45 or whatever to win a football game. My defense can take care of it. I got a great offensive line. I can pound the rock a little bit and set up play pass. I think he's a really innovative play caller, and I think having a really good defense is going to further him as a head coach.
Yeah, I do too. I said this to somebody the other day because, Matt, you're right. The Washington football team that he had last year was a phenomenal football team, a great football team. I mean, they came, they played for the national championship, and they had just as many NFL draft picks as Alabama did. And you mentioned, Penix and Rome Odunze, the wide receiver, how good they were. But still, for an incomplete roster of talent, this will be the most talented team that Kalen DeBoer has ever coached. And that's not a knock on Washington. Washington might have been a better football team than Alabama last year. But just 1 through 85, this will be the most talent he has ever coached. So you think about what he's been able to do at other places, and now he inherits this much talent. I think they're going to have an exceptional football team. I do. Again, how many games will they win? I have not broken it down. I will before they play their first one. Game by game, I'll make my predictions. But right now, I think Alabama's in that mix for the national championship. You talk about how the much scrutiny here, it was a big news this week when for the first time since 2009, Alabama was outside of the top 3 of the preseason coaches poll, and they were number 5 in 2009 and 14-0 and won the national championship. So, but that's, 14 straight seasons of being ranked in the top 3. And then you're in the top 5 still. Yeah. And people are saying, I told you Alabama's slipping. I told you Alabama's not the same Alabama. They're number 5, Look out. They're on the way down. So
women and children, what do we get? The humanity of it all.
But I think he's got a really talented roster to work with. And like every coach has at every team, Georgia, Ohio State included, there are questions, but I like this team. And I think what Matt said as far as the defense, and I'm going to have Ellis Johnson on my show this morning. Yeah. You'll remember this, Rob. He ran the 4.25 at South Carolina and at Auburn. Mm-hmm. And he's friends with Dave Womack, who everybody credits, Kane's dad. Yeah. And, one thing I'm going to ask him about the 4.25, that the only negative I've heard on it, going back to my days in Mississippi, is that that defense was created because – whether it's Dave Womack or whoever came up with it, because some schools don't have the ability to get those top-notch defensive linemen. And it's a lot easier to find defensive backs than it is defensive linemen. Yes. And so, again, it's not a gimmick, but, at Alabama, you got defensive linemen. So I want to ask Ellis, because Kane Womack he said the other day, talking about being multiple and all these things and trying to get those 3 linebackers, Lawson, Campbell, and Jefferson on the field at the same time. And he said, we're going to look at different ways to do that. We want to get them all on the field. But, we're always going to have 5 DBs. That's who we are. And it struck me, and I was like, well, what if you're playing a team that's running the ball? Not that you're going to do, but it's going to run the ball 40 times. Do you really want, 5 DBs? So I can't wait to ask Ellis about, just the concepts of the 4.25 and breaking it down. But they do have a lot of defensive talent.
Yeah, it'd be fun. Man, I know you've got to hop out. One more question before you got to go with Gary, and then we'll wrap it up.
No, Gary, I just want to add to what you said, the 4.25. At the University of Iowa, they have a position called the cash position. It's kind of similar mindset. But Iowa has really good linebacker play. They returned Jay Higgins, who's an All-American last year, and Nick Jackson, who played at Virginia and portaled in. But the thing Gary's right on, linebackers will tell you, if I can get a D lineman to keep those O linemen off the blocks on me, then I have a chance to be very successful in the gaps, leading side to side. And I think that's something that really is overlooked in all defenses is the defensive linemen, and they're hard to get. I talk to my football staff all the time, and you're right. You can get some of these DBs that we may even convert into a linebacker, but man, the mentality to get.
Yeah. Just hard to find them. Gary, I know you got to get going for your show. Tell people how they can follow you. You do great work every day, and you're part of the SEC Sidelines Sports Network. We love having you and Rodney on because you've forgotten more about Alabama than the rest of the collective world knows. And there are a handful of others that I will say do know Alabama, but y'all are two of the elite.
Well, thank you. And yeah, you can follow me on Twitter or X or Twix or whatever you want to call it at Gary Harris _WVUA. And then my Gary Harris WVUA 23 Facebook page. I'm putting out a lot of content on both of those. And I'd love for people to follow me on both Twix and Twitter and X and Facebook and Gary Harris WVUA on Facebook and also the TV station WVUA23.com and the radio station Tide109.com. So pumping out a lot of info. Appreciate
what time's Ellis going to be on? Because I've got that app in my truck. I've got to leave.
He's going to be on it. He's going to be on at 9:30 Central.
I'll be listening. Thank you so much.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Hey, you bet, man. Great stuff as always. Gary Harris. Love having him on here. Andy Humphry. Matt, I know you got a big day ahead of you. Love this conversation, man. You're a Swiss Army knife, man. You can pivot to basketball, football, but that coaching, getting inside your head, understanding the coaching. And you know what? If you've got a bad defensive line, you know what happens? The running backs hit your linebackers at 18 miles an hour, and it's a disaster. Defensive linemen, the game used to come right at you. They might have 300 tackles in a career. Now, if a guy plays 4 years on the defensive line, he's got 150 tackles for his career. That's a big, big career. Matt, God, I love this time of year. Hey, for executive producer Brendan Martin, all of our sponsors, everybody watching, hey, man, most often we see the face of Christ in the least among us. Go out and do great things. We live in the greatest country in the history of the world. Been watching the Olympics. Proud to see all those Olympians draped in the American flag. A lot of American pride, American exceptionalism. It is outstanding. I just got one question, Matt. Duplantis, LSU guy, running for Sweden, the pole vaulter. The guy's unreal, but his mother's from Sweden, and he's born and raised in Lafayette, Louisiana. So do we count him in the American medal total? I think he goes in that SEC category. If the SEC were a country, I think it's second most medals of any country in the world. The SEC, a country. Can you imagine that? You'll be the ambassador. How about that, Matt?
I'll take that job anytime. And you know what? Just what a phenomenal group of athletes. And it's always fun watching. I know you love track and field.
Oh, God, I love
it's always fun watching track and field. And I'll see you next week, brother. I got to roll.
All right. Thanks so much, everybody. Have a great day. We'll see you tomorrow. Appreciate it. Brendan here with us. Are you frozen?
No, I'm not frozen. We had a slight internet meltdown. So yeah, thanks everybody for watching the show.
Thank you so much, man.
Everything's working fine. Nothing to see here. No trees falling on cars.
What Perry Mason says, Lord, the changes, says the great citrus farmer from Central Florida. Hey, man, Lord. Brendan, thanks for getting us through it. I appreciate it.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
All right.
So important to shop local and to buy American. For 60 years, Hewlett & Dunn Boot and Clothing Company has been on the historic Collierville Square, and we strive to sell made in the USA products when available. With over 7,000 pairs of Western boots and work boots in stock for men and women, come and see our huge selection of clothing, jeans, and accessories from top brands made in the USA. Please support local business and come shop with us at Hewlett & Dunn Boot and Clothing Company. God bless the USA.
In a perfect world, you'd set a health goal and results would happen overnight. In this world, the real world, it takes time, dedication, and the right support to achieve your best self. The Vitamin Shop's health enthusiasts are here to make sure you're not wasting a single moment on the wrong supplements. From the highest quality sports nutrition and superfoods to the most sought after trends, you'll find a huge variety of science-backed solutions for every goal. And the people to help guide you along the path to greatness.
Unbelievably, every 2 minutes in our communities, a child is either bought or sold for sex. I am Ari Dickey, board member for the Nashville Anti-Human Trafficking Coalition. Join me and millions of others in our fight against human trafficking and for its victims by helping to educate the most vulnerable among us, our middle and high school students. Go to nhtcoalition.org, become a partner, and help keep our families safe, because none of God's children are for sale.